Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're delighted to have a special guest on the radio with us today. A great guy, a guy we've worked with very recently. He's a legend to all of us and to all of it. It's Mr. Richard Digance. Yeah. Are you there, Richard?
No, he's not here.
Oh, no, wrong number.
No,
Sorry, wrong number. How you
I'm
doing?
standing in for him.
Oh, brilliant. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm okay. How is it over there?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. How was the recent tour? You literally just finished, I believe, haven't you?
No, I'm only 3 weeks into it. I've got about another 12 weeks to go.
Oh, what I meant was the first run. You've just done a first run, and then you're back on it, or is it continuous? Is it?
It's a week off now.
Yeah.
I don't normally tour this early, and I think the snow is the proof that it was a smart move. But
yeah.
But there was so many dates to go in. I had to start a bit early this year, but I don't normally start till April or something like that, you know, when people have cleared...
warms up a bit.
Well, yeah, and people have cleared their credit cards from Christmas, you know.
True, yeah, we all know, yeah, you're so right, you're so true there, yeah. And we had the pleasure of working with you recently, or seeing you at a venue.
It wasn't a pleasure for me.
Oh, no, well, it was for me. It was for
okay.
me. No, yeah. But in Essex, and it was absolutely brilliant, and you had the... guy with you, the folk singer, and is that what the tour is this time? Is it, or is it slightly different, or is it the same that we see in Essex?
No, it's a new show this year because I sort of constantly tour. I have to turn the material around. You know, I can't live on the old cobweb songs, you know, like a lot of people do, because it's a lot of stories about what's been happening and this, that, and the other, and so. Yeah, every year I turn it round, and
brilliant.
And on this particular tour, otherwise, to be honest, people don't come. They go, oh, "I've seen him," you know, and stuff like that. So I'm always try and keep it fresh. So Eric Sedge is the name of the guy that performs with me, and so he does like a 25-minute warm up, and then I join him to do a couple of songs from our new musical, which no doubt we'll chat about in a minute. And then I do the second half with all the golden oldies and all the stuff the Essex mob love: fruit salads, blackjacks, marshmallow shrimps, jubbies, bazookas, spangles, nymphs, all that all nonsense.
It's brilliant.
And and I enjoy doing it. That's the thing. I was born to perform, and I'm getting on a bit now, but I still love it. So
you still look very young anyway. You still look very young. Look like a young man.
Who's that silly person?
This is Gary. Richard, I've got to tell you, back in when you say about all the old songs and stuff like that, obviously when I was growing up, I was a massive fan of you when I was younger. I used to watch you playing. I used to love it. I used to watch. I remember like when I was growing up, stuff like before. I think it was before like all the massive TV stuff. You were stuff like on the old grey whistle test and done stuff like that as well. I remember that and being on shows like that in the early days.
I did. Yeah, I did. In fact, I think because I went on a couple of times with Bob Harris, but I also went on with Annie Nightingale, and she said to me, "We've never had anyone do a poem on the whistle test. Yeah. Would you do one of your poems?" And I said, "Well, it's a bit rock and roll, the whistle test, isn't it?" And she said, "Well, yeah, but it would be just something different." And I said, "Well, I'll do a poem if I get another whistle test badge for my mate."
Brilliant.
Because we all used to do the whistle test just to get a badge, because they were so sacred, you know. It's like a blue Peter badge, you know.
Yeah.
And so I bashed out, I think, one of the first, if not the first, although don't quote me, but I think it was the first poem ever performed on the whistle test. And I did it for a badge, so there you go.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, I remember then, obviously seeing all them bits, and then obviously when I was growing up, and then it was all the you had this Saturday night TV, you had all the big stars on with you. I remember seeing you play a song sitting there with Brian May, who's a hero of mine as well. You and Brian.
Yeah, I did.
There.
Yeah.
Status Quo. It was everybody. But you know, it was everybody was on your show. You know, back in.
Yeah. It was lovely when Brian May did it, because he was keen to do it. He had a solo album coming out, and I'm also a massive fan of Brian's, and I was chuffed to blazes when he said he'd do it, and I got in touch with him and said, "Well, if you're coming on my show, would you like to sing a song with me?" And he went, "Yeah, just send us what in them days was a cassette." You know, he said, "Send us a cassette and I'll learn it." And I was thinking he was going to play his normal sort of Queen style guitar, and he turned up with this little acoustic guitar, knowing that I'm a bit of a folky. He turned up with an acoustic guitar that his dad had made for him.
Amazing,
That's great.
And yeah, it was fantastic. And he said, I've never played this on telly. It's just something that I've always kept because my dad built it for me. And we did a little song, She's a Lady, on 2 acoustic guitars and a string quartet. And it's probably still the highlight of my whole television days,
That was amazing because there's a bit, I think it's one of your songs, and he's playing and he plays this lead. He plays the lead on it and everything. He
does.
Bit, and it's amazing to watch it. And he's sitting there. And so I'm a big, obviously, like, my other job is impersonating Freddie Mercury for a living. So I'm a massive Queen and Freddie Mercury and Brian May fan.
Oh, I know you, don't I?
Of course you do. You know now. And so this is the thing. When you watch that, obviously for me, like liking you and liking Brian May, and it's like Brian May playing, so Brian May play lead on one of your songs. It's just like ridiculous, isn't it? Really,
It is. It's never left me. It's always been like, wow, what a pinnacle, And although I played with the Moody Blues and Quo and various other people, that it's still the highlight was to play with Brian May because he is. Him and Knopfler for me are the 2 best British guitar players. I put them personally, of course I can only speak personally, but I put them above Clapton, because Knopfler is what he doesn't play. It's the lovely gaps he leaves, in his music. And Brian May is so distinctive, and of course he gets that amazing sound by playing with a 2-pence piece.
That's it.
He don't use a plectrum or anything, and I admire that sort of unique guitar playing, and I always kept in touch with Brian May. And, if I'm ever doing a charity thing or anything like that, he's the first one to give some auction items and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a great, great moment in my life.
Right, and it's worth a watch. If you YouTube it, it's a really great watch. It's still on there. And I was even watching it a couple of weeks ago. It's on there. And it's a great thing to look at, boys. You get a look at that. It's really good. Now, I mentioned it, and you sort of losing my thread here a bit because we're talking about the old songs. For me, back in 1994, you won't remember this because you've done millions and millions of gigs, right? But for me, as a bit of a comic person who just looks at everyone and is a bit of a hero of love comics, you know what I mean? It was like my thing. I used to love watching comics. You were one of my favourites. You was up there with all my favourites. So I used to watch you do all them songs, and I used to think it was fascinating because it was, not doing gags. It was doing these really funny songs. So I used to know the songs. I used to play guitar myself and learn myself and copy your songs as a kid so I could do your songs. It was lovely. As a kid growing up,
lovely
thing to do, right? So there was a couple of things about Richard Digance that I loved. First thing was, I loved that Richard Digance. He was great at playing the guitar and he could write these great songs. Number 2, he was from Plaistow, where I was from. So that was great.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was born Forest Gate Hospital, but grew up off near Balham Street, off near Pelly Road, all that way. Near the Black
I know Balham Street, where Staddens was.
That's it. And then moving out to Romford when I was a kid. But then the third thing, Richard Digance was a massive West Ham fan as well.
I know.
So Richard Digance to me was like, wow, he's just good. Yeah. So I'm into.
I also moved out to Gidea Park.
Oh, okay. Bit posh.
Yeah, and there's a great story. I used to live in Upper Brentwood Road in Gidea Park when I left home, and I was still struggling a bit, and so I was driving an ambulance for the PDSA in Redbridge. I was driving a mobile dispensary sort of unit, around Essex for. We used to go to Basildon and places like that, and Seven Kings, funny enough, and we used to park up, and if anyone had a sick animal, there'd be my little PDSA thing there. So I did that for a little while, and then I was renting a room in Upper Brentwood Road from a guy called Jazz Summers, who was the chief radiographer at Old Church Hospital in Romford. Yeah. So I'm still struggling and a bit starving, and he said, why don't you ever get any gigs? I said, oh, well, I try, but the folk clubs, I can't get round them all in the country. I can't afford it, unless they book me. And he said, well, I'll manage you. And I thought, oh, here we go. The number of times people say that to you. And he said, well, look, because I run the X-ray department, I can shut the door because people can't come in if the red light's on. So what I'll do is when I shut the door, I'll ring round and get you some gigs. And he became my manager.
Great.
And he managed me for 14 months. And after 14 months, he said, "Oh, I've really enjoyed it, but I don't really want to manage you anymore." And I said, "Oh, Jazz, we're just starting to succeed. You know, we got a tour with Steel Eye Span and stuff like that." And he said, "No, I'm not really into the folky thing." And he said, "I've got this duo that I've formed, and I think they're going to do better. You know, I want to get into the pop world." And I said, "Jazz, you're going to regret it. It'll be the biggest mistake you've ever made." So he formed this duo called Wham. And so he dumped me for Wham, and the rest, of course, is history. We just lost Jazz, but I mean, he managed Snow Patrol and Scissor Sisters and various other, and it all started with him closing the door at Old Church Hospital, getting gigs for me.
Great story. That is a great story.
Yeah, it is, and he became a massive name in the music world. You know,
you've done. Sorry, Richard, carry on. Sorry.
No, I've finished now. I'm making it all up anyway.
No, I was just going to say you've done so much, haven't you? In your time from the children's books to you was on Countdown for a number of years, and
19 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know you, like you were saying earlier at the start of the show, you still update the material all the time, and we're going to talk to a play about one of your musical plays in a minute. But where do you always get your inspiration from for the new, for the new material? And is that just people watching and life watching, or
No, it's not. It's not really that. It's what you were saying. I was always a live performer, and I went into telly by mistake. To be brutally honest, I never expected to get on television or anything. I was a jobbing musician, if you like.
Yeah.
Mostly working run your way, and trying
to,
pay my rent and what have you. And I got a couple of little bites, as you said, about whistle tests and things, but never really a TV performer. I never really wanted to be a TV person. I'm going to be brutally honest. It didn't really interest me. I was just a guitar player who told stories in my head.
Yeah.
But then I was working at Capital Radio in London, and I used to do a program called Midnight Special on Capital, midnight till 4. And I went for a daytime job at Capital, and the stupid woman who ran the place said I had the wrong accent. They wanted a sort of a West Coast Californian accent. I said, "Hang on a minute, this is a London station. I was born in London."
Yeah.
And they said, no, we don't need that. So me and the other bloke who went through the night after me, I did midnight till 4, and I was useless because I had the wrong voice. And the other bloke they said would never make it from 4 till 7 was Philip Schofield.
Really?
So the two of us used to see the night through on Capital, and then one night I was on my own. There was only a security guard downstairs. The whole of the Capital Radio place was absolutely, totally empty, and so I had to man the phones myself and everything in them days. And I got a phone call from Jim Davidson, and he said, "I'm just listening to your show in my car." He said, "Can I come in and have a chat?" And I went, "Yeah, of course you can." I'd never met him before, and he came in, and it turns out he'd sung one of my songs about a drag queen, and I didn't know any of this. And he was going to come in just to say hello, and he sat with me for 4 hours. We had the phones open.
Great.
And he said to me, "Do you fancy coming on tour with me?" And at the time it was difficult because I was employed by Capital, so I'd have to take my holidays,
Yeah.
And then I said to my wife, I can't remember her name, it's too long ago. I know her initials, they're HSBC, I can't remember her name. And she said, "Yeah, you got to do it. Forget the holidays, go on tour with Davidson."
Yeah.
And then I ended up in the Falklands, and
of course,
the good thing about working with Jim is that there were TV people hanging around him who had never heard of me, and they said, "Who's this other bloke plays the guitar?" And I was Richard. And so I went into my own TV special straight away with Thames TV, and then I got signed up by it's got some what's it called? ST.
STV.
Oh,
Was it STV?
no, them down in Kent. You know,
Swell.
what
No.
were they
Oh,
called?
yeah. TVS.
TVS, that was
TVS,
it.
yeah.
And the boss of TVS was a guy called Greg Dyke, and he went from TVS to London Weekend, and he took me and Bobby Davro with him as part of the deal, and so thus began my career with London Weekend and ITV. But if I'd not sort of spoken to Davidson, you know, I would never have really got all that. So I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah,
to Jim.
it's strange the twists and turns, isn't it, in life? And now.
Oh, it is, yeah. So when he was down in the dumps with Operation Nutri and all that, I went and did some more dates with him and tried my best to keep his pecker up a bit, you know. And,
that's great, mate. That's great to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he came through that all right. And won Big Brother, and
we had him on the show, and he spoke so candidly about it. We just seemed
Yeah,
to really.
he tells it as it is, doesn't he, Jim? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's great.
Well,
again,
you love him or hate him. He's a bit Marmite, isn't he? But I've only got thanks to say to him, really, you know. So really falling into telly was never really my plan. It was, I was actually settled in as a radio presenter, to be honest, doing sort of gigs in the evening when I wasn't on radio, and I'd had a nice career at Capital. I'd been to radio school and qualified as a producer.
Oh, really? Brilliant. That's
good. So I was sort of set up to do that until Davidson strolled in and changed my whole life.
So with the transition, Richard, the transition then from radio going to TV, because I never knew that you'd done radio. See, that's how rubbish I am. But to me,
I did. Well, how I started that was on hospital radio in East Ham Memorial Hospital in Shrewsbury Road, and my whole beginnings, if you like, in media was as a hospital radio presenter, and then when I moved out of the East End and went to Romford,
where I live, lovely.
I went and did a stint for Moorfields Eye Hospital. As a presenter, so I was learning my trade as a radio presenter long before.
Which is amazing, because obviously then when I'd my first thing of seeing you was on TV really as well, you know, doing the TV stuff and doing your Saturday night show. So to me it was like you was a natural TV presenter and TV performer, and it was yours. It was a Richard Digance show, so it was like So if you never knew about that radio thing, and you said like, well, you weren't sure about going into TV, and it happened, but you seemed like a duck to water to it. Really, it was just a thing, natural.
My lucky thing was I was never nervous, and because I'd been live so many. Well, I was at Capital for nearly 5 years before television, and so and I'd had my own series on radio too as well. So I was used to being live. That's the whole thing. I was a performer. You know, the same as you are, and you know that when you're a performer, nothing can really go wrong.
No.
Because if it does, you can mend it. And I got in trouble a couple of times at Capital. I remember once on the night Karen Carpenter died, and I was never really a huge Carpenter's fan, to be honest, apart from the guitar solo on Goodbye to Love. But when she died, I had to rush down to the library, again on my own in the building, grab a single out of the library at Capitol and rush back while they were reading the news. And I came back on air and said, oh, sorry about Karen Carpenter. And for all the people of London, you know, here's my tribute to Karen Carpenter. And I played I'm Looking Down on the World. I'm on top of the world looking down on creation.
No.
And I got in so much trouble, and I didn't even mean it.
No, of course not. No.
And I fell asleep. Well, I fell asleep one night on Capitol, played an album by David McWilliams, who did the Days of Pearly Spencer. I played his whole album and fell asleep, and no one noticed. And I thought, time to move on, I think.
Richard, it's Johnny Ward here. Really pleasure to listen to your interview and speaking to you.
Thank you.
Richard, do you write every day, or if something comes into your head, have you got a little computer? Do you put things down on tape, or
I write. Yeah, I do write every single day.
Yeah, I thought you would. You know.
And when I go,
performers do.
Yeah, and when I go to bed, I have a little a little ritual where I just before, unless I'm completely out of it, but I'll go to bed and I sit with my little notepad and make a little note of what I'd thought of in the day or whatever.
Right.
And I've done that for so many years. Otherwise, you forget. You know?
Yeah. And is there a period in the morning or in the evening where you sort of really you're really alert and you can write quite a lot down? Is there a special period? Yeah.
This time of the day, speaking now, it's all sort of biorhythms for any writer. Most writers are good at night. I mean, I've got a studio here, and I do all my music, all the incidental music that I do for TV shows and things is all done at night.
Right.
And mainly because of noise. I live near a road, and so it's not just inspiration. It's quite handy that I can stay awake when there's no lorries going by and things.
Yeah, and no disturbances.
Have you got?
That's right.
Richard, have you got material that's never been released and you thought, well, it's not quite up to it, or you just didn't fancy getting it out? Or...
Yeah, I got. Well, it was back in 2003 that I got my British Academy Award, which is quite a long time ago now. Yeah. And that was the Gold Award for which I got with Midge Ewer and Cliff Richard, I think.
Fantastic.
For my services to live music, and the reason they gave me that Gold Award was because that year was the year I published my 2000th song, and that was the
that's incredible.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, but most of them were crap.
No.
Well, they were, and a lot of them sounded the same. But you see, when I first started in TV, in radio, I was working on the BBC with a bloke called Bernard Braden, and he was the funny man at the time, and I had to write 4 songs a week. So so it was really hard work, and I joined them with Griff Rhys-Jones and all that period, and it was really bloody hard work writing all them songs, but they all stored up. So of that 2000, I reckon a good half of them are rubbish, to be brutally honest, but they store away, and there are songs that I just think, oh well, I'd forgotten about that one, and you can rewrite, obviously, because they're my songs. I can do what I want with them, and so I do recycle. Yeah, I think it's good for the planet.
Yeah.
And
Richard's got some fantastic books out, and he's got the Christmas one for anyone that's got children out there, which is absolutely, well, they're all brilliant, but that is fantastic. And I know everyone grabs a copy of that when it comes around to about November, Richard, don't they? It's really brilliant, really brilliant. I mean, I've got my little lad, and he's got some some of the David Walliams type books, but that is better, definitely. Richard's one is fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, well, that was a fluke as well, really, because when I was doing radio, which we were talking about a little while ago, and I was on Radio 2, and they said to me, do you want to do a little kids series about animals? And I went, yeah, I can do that. And you just say, yeah, of course, it's work, you get paid. And I didn't even present it. It was presented by Windsor Davis and Hannah Gordon, the actress. And I wrote the Animal Alphabet series for them. Someone heard it on the radio, and Penguin, Puffin Books or whatever they were called, stepped in, published it, and still to this day, and you're talking a long time ago, but still to this day,
that's great.
It's licensed in 14 different countries as a teaching aid for kids.
Amazing.
Which is great, because it's a bit more royalties while I can sit and go fishing.
What an accolade! Now, coming up this year, this is really, well, everything you do we love and it's brilliant, but this is really great and a little bit different as well. Look for America. I'm going to have to just pass over and say, tell us a little bit about this, the Look for America, because it's such a great story.
Yeah, well, my mate Eric, who's on tour with me, lives in Suffolk, above you, and in a little place called Otley, which is just to the right of Ipswich, and he discovered this bloke called Bartholomew Gosnold, and I'd never heard of him. No one had ever heard of him.
Isn't it great?
And he was the first bloke to sail to America and formed the first English settlement in Jamestown, Virginia, long before the Pilgrims and the Mayflower. Now, if you're only a sort of slouch secondary modern kid like me, I thought the Pilgrims discovered, America and all that, but they didn't. It was 13 years before that.
Amazing.
These hooligans went over to get gold and slaves and stuff like that. And so because of the reason they went, even America doesn't really acknowledge them because they were a bit hooliganish, and so we discovered, or I didn't, Eric discovered this bloke, and I said, it's such a great story. It's not just one song. We should write a musical. And we've got, there's a whole society in America that really go for him, and I'd never heard of the man. So we made an album, and we sold out on our gigs and so on and so on. But it's created an awful lot of interest. I mean, Paul's been involved with it a bit, but it's moved on incredibly since I saw you, Paul.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the next steps. It's absolutely brilliant.
It rattles on, and we've got the Jamestown Museum in America now interested in it, and it's fantastic to do a real life story that time had forgotten,
Yeah.
So folky,
Yeah, so in that play, that would be you and from two others, I believe, wasn't it? That telling the story.
Yeah, it's not so much a play. It's more
music. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sort of mini, sort of folky musical. If you can imagine three guys telling a story with a narrator, telling the story about this hooligan on his ship, and this, that, and the other. I mean, it was only a little ship. It was 2 yards, 6 feet shorter than a cricket pitch. And
that's amazing,
and in that it is, and in that tiny boat, they went from Blackwall, just by Blackwall Tunnel there, all the way around to Jamestown, Virginia.
That's amazing.
53 of them on the ship, 16 of them died on the way over, and them blokes actually founded the United States of America.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and the big twist to it all really is that they planted tobacco seeds. They were starving because they'd fallen out with the native Indians, but they planted tobacco seeds, and tobacco saved their lives, which is incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, destroys so many others. Great. So we certainly look forward to a bit.
Yeah, nice project. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Richard, I'm going to quickly diverse back quickly a little bit, only because I don't want to forget myself and not say it. Is that when I was saying earlier on about you and all the stuff you've done, I was a big fan of you. And in 1995, it would have been the year, my job at the time, I was entertainment manager at Pontins Canberra Sands. And what it was a special function weekend. It was like an organisation had booked the whole centre. And you were the cabaret on the Saturday night, and you turned up. I had to meet you and show you where your dressing room was and when you was on. It was actually, I remember it now, it was a classic, it was a CRSA, which was a Classic Car Automobile Association big event it was, and Richard was a cabaret. So I met you, Richard, and obviously being as a young kid, loving what you had done. And when I met you, I've got to tell you now, it was like I'd met people I'd liked as a kid. And it never left, but you was an absolute superstar that night. You was a lovely guy, and it was so lovely to someone you would listen to. And I remember you going up there and doing all your stuff, and you'd done a couple of, and in your show, this is even crazy now, even now being 45, the things I remember, Richard Digance, even all the stuff he's done, the thing I remember, all it stuck in my head was the lyric, hush, hush, whisper who dares, Noddy and Big Ears have just gone upstairs. Now, was that the Nursery Rhymes? Was that the Nursery Rhymes song you done?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit because someone laughed in my ear.
It was, you went, hush, hush, whisper who dares, Noddy and Big Ears have just gone upstairs. That was a lyric.
At it upstairs.
Yeah. Oh, at it upstairs. Sorry. That was, and was that I remember that was one of my favourites, and also as well, the Jungle World Cup.
Yeah, Jungle Cup final,
Yeah, Jungle Cup final. And
when the giraffes beat the gorillas.
Brilliant. And there was a Remember song with all the Remembers.
Yeah.
Which was great. But recently, I don't know, along this one, when you've done this one of my favourite ones you've done, in fact, I downloaded it for 99 pence about 5 years ago on my iTunes. Mm. And it was the I've Won the Lottery song.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Have you heard that, boys?
Not the lottery one. No.
Absolutely amazing. And
download it.
And it, to me, it was like when you listen to all them bits now, we played the Remember song. We played it on the show, didn't we, a few months ago?
Yeah, we did.
And when you just sit back, it just takes you back, and it doesn't. None of the stuff you do, it's all so relevant still. Do you know what I mean? If that's mad,
Well, that's what I mean about having to turn the material around. I mean, to be honest, no one gives a toss about the lottery these days. But at the time, it was so huge, wasn't it? And I remember sort of it was the reincarnation of Noel Edmonds at the time, and it was a really big thing. And we all believed we were going to win. And it's a bit like a Reader's Digest draw, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And you've never ever met anyone who's ever won a Reader's Digest draw. And if they do, they probably live on the Isle of Skye or something.
And apart from,
but go on.
I said, apart from all the great music and the stuff you do, there's one thing as well. Like I said earlier on, that I've always liked you for as well, and that was being a West Ham United fan.
Yeah.
And I saw there was a couple of the. I need a glass of water. About a year and a half ago, it might have been when we left the old ground. You done a lovely piece. It was on YouTube. You was out. I think you might have been outside the ground, and and it was a lovely piece. You done a lovely piece about that. It was amazing. And at that time, but obviously being bought in that area and all our families with West Ham, it was quite.
Well, it came from the heart. That it wasn't done for any reason other than I wanted to do it from the heart because I was totally and utterly against leaving Upton Park.
Yeah.
When I was a little boy, and you'll know this, is that I wasn't even allowed to go to Stratford on my track bike. It was too far away. It was, where they built that ground, bit of a dump, and I used to go over Beckton or whatever, and every other Saturday, my job was to clean the kitchen, and then my dad would take me to Upton Park on a number 15 bus.
That's it.
And it was very, very much my life.
Yeah.
And I find it even to this day so sad that football is no longer a sport; it's an industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right.
And these three people who come in who say, "Oh yeah, we're West Ham through and through." Well, really, I remember when you were directors of Birmingham, as it happens. But anyway, we'll forget that. And suddenly, these Thames iron workers who built Blackwall Tunnel, who built ships like the Great Eastern, these old riveters and hammer workers, which is why obviously they're called the Hammers, suddenly their whole history has been shot away to go to some, bloody athletic stadium where the players are about the size of a matchstick, and I was very, very anti. And what made me anti was that I was very much a major part of West Ham Supporters Club in Priory Road, and they asked Golden Sullivan if they'd acknowledge the supporters club and give them a place at the new thing, and they said no, we're nothing to do with the supporters club.
That's bad.
And sadly it's being pulled down now, which is a terrible shame. And on the wall of the West Ham supporters club is a wall. It's called the Richard Digance wall, and we used to do a show there every year and buy a guide dog, and there's 13 pictures of guide dogs called Trevor, Bonzo,
brilliant.
Ray Stewart, Parksy, and it don't exist anymore, and it's a real hurtful thing. So what I did was a couple of months ago, instead of doing money for that, we opened very close to you a cat rescue place just in Goodmaze.
Okay.
And it's called the Jess Digance Hostel. For cats.
Brilliant.
And it's named Jess after my dog, who sadly passed away last year. And as you go into the little cattery place there, it says, in honour of Jess Digance, who spent all her life chasing cats, and now she looks after them.
Oh, brilliant. That's great.
Yeah.
What a great little story,
But when you go back to it, you've done that piece on West Ham, and it was, at the time, all the people from the East End of London and out of my way go, we was all mortified that we were leaving. We didn't want to go.
No.
And I think your piece really, it was emotional. We was all
From the heart,
emotional wrecks we were when we left that ground. And
well, that's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, when you go around doing gigs and things, people go, "Oh, you're an Hammers supporter." So am I. Well, yeah, you may well be, but you probably didn't do what I did. You didn't go every other Saturday for donkey's years with your dad until he passed away. You know, you didn't have that history of more Peters than Earths, and I go back further than that. Don't forget, I'm an old bugger, me. You know, I mean, I remember the first game I ever went to at Upton Park, and I begged my dad. I used to get a magazine called Charles Buchan's Football Monthly, and I begged my dad to take me because we had Blackpool in the cup. Brilliant. And I wanted to see Stanley Matthews in real life, you know. And I can still name the team. How about that? It was Ernie Gregory in goal, John Bond, Noel Campbell, Andy Malcolm, Ken Brown, Malcolm Allison, Mike Grice, Phil Woosnam, Vic Keeble, John Dick, Malcolm Musgrove. There you go.
Brilliant. What a memory.
And that was the first West Ham team I ever saw in real life. And I used to get my bobble out with my little star badges on.
That's it, yeah.
And I used to stand outside and get autographs and stuff. Now, I hated that those three people took away that history. Yeah. And I can't help it. You know, I mean, good luck to those who are all in favour of the Olympic Stadium or whatever they want to call it now. But it's not Upton Park. No. And it's purely finance. And that's why people are kicking up now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we don't endorse what's going on, but you can understand the undercurrent, you know, because no one listens to the public. No one listens to the pundits.
Of course they won't. You're right. It's an industry. It's money. They don't care about the normal man no more.
No more at all. I mean, we don't figure because they've made their money with Sky.
That's it.
They don't even need our turnstile money anymore. You know.
You know what? One of the things that makes me the thing I miss the most, one of the biggest things I miss the most about West Ham, and this is really stupid, but it's getting out of Upton Park Station, walking down Green Street when you had all the hot dog sellers either side.
Well,
that
all
smell,
part of it,
the smell of onions and the burgers, and all the people in their houses selling their programmes and their old West Ham badges. It was that thing of walking down there and feeling that atmosphere. That was it, the smell of it. And now it's not.
And the fact, well, more to the point, all those people now are out of business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they didn't care.
It cropped up earlier, Richard, and I think the sad part about it is because sometimes, like, I know, like, you know, White Hart Lane moved up the road, which is not like West Ham, of course, but sometimes little things change. But it cropped up earlier on the show, and what people were saying is it's not West Ham haven't even brought the ground, you know. So really, you've sort of lost
nothing.
Nothing. Really?
It's like renting. It's like renting a shop. Yeah, you know, it's never going to be yours. You need if you're going to go to a stadium. Yeah, it's got to be a stadium that's
a bit strange. It's like Richard said. It's money, unfortunately.
It is. But what if one day someone says we don't want you here anymore?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, then West Ham are vagrants. You know, they're homeless tramps. Walking the streets, and it's not right. I don't care what anyone says. In my head. Being I mean, I don't go to West Ham anymore, and to be brutally honest, and I will put my cards on the table, I wouldn't know who 3 or 4 or 5 of the players are because they're only there until they get re-signed somewhere else. We saw it with what's his name, great player, last year. I know. I know his name. I just didn't want to say it.
Oh, sorry.
And you just think loyalty, you know. And I saw on the news old Trevor Brookins sitting there on his own, you know, in a director's box. It broke my heart, and I thought, Trevor, what you doing there? You know, they obviously don't listen to you, you know. And Trevor Brookins to me is, I mean, I know Trevor obviously, and he is the absolute pinnacle of what a West Ham player was, and I can even name him from my youth because. The last one would probably be Mark Noble, and before that, you know, I don't know, sort of Billy Bonds maybe, Trevor Brooking. I mean, even more, you know, moved on, didn't he? He moved on to Fulham and so on. But there were then one club people who I absolutely respect and admire, and I know Mark Noble's reaching, you know, the end of his sort of career at his age, but he's been a great servant to West Ham, and it's always him that speaks from the heart when they're being interviewed.
Richard, we talk about money has taken over the game, and it has. But
Yeah.
even if you go to a lower level, look at the circumstances that Dulwich Hamlet have found themselves in. I don't know if you've been following that story.
I have, yeah.
Dulwich Hamlet, been there for over 100 years, 18 something, and the builders...
I'll tell you a story about Dulwich Hamlet.
Yeah.
I used to play for a team called the Gold Diggers, which was... Do you remember Brian Moore, the old football commentator?
Yeah.
He had a charity team that we all used to play for, and we had a game against the Showbiz 11, and I was playing sort of centre half, if you like, for the Gold Diggers, and this corner came up rather, and so I had to run up, like centre halves do, then run back again because it was a crap kick, and the ball came over, and it was at Dulwich Hamlet's ground, would you believe?
Oh right, yeah.
And the ball came over. And in goal for the Showbiz 11 was Jess Conrad.
Oh, brilliant.
And so the ball comes over. I jumped up in the air to try and head it. Jess Conrad runs out because he's the goalie. And instead of punching the ball, punched me in the face and knocked me out. And it must have been about 20 years later, I bumped into him at I don't know if it was one of your dudes, one of them dudes in Kent. And Jess Conrad was there, and I said, he said, "Oh, Richard Digance, nice to meet you." I said, "You've met me before." He said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Oh, I love your work." I said, No, you've met me before." And he said, "How? I don't remember it." I said, "Dulwich Hamlet football ground, the Gold Diggers against the Showbiz 11, you were in goal, you ran out to punch a corner away, and instead of that, you smacked me in the face and knocked me out." And he said, "Really, love? What was I wearing?"
Oh, no. Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, Richard, it's been an absolute delight to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure.
It really is. And keep up all the good work. We love it all, and look forward to
doing my best.
more about Look for America. That's fantastic
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, good.
Yeah,
good stuff.
It's been a pleasure, Richard. Thank you so much, mate. And
that's all right, boys.
Keep writing some of them great songs as well, because I'm sure there's a few more albums ready to come out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do a couple more before I kick it in.
Richard, little message from Trevor Brooking to try and cheer you up. Well, it's always nice to go back down West Ham, but I'm sure that all the West Ham lads are all going to get together, and I know that one day we'll all be back together again.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice?
There you go.
Beautiful.
All right, Richard.
Keep well,
Cheers,
mate.
Ed.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye then.
Bye, mate.
Richard Digance, how about that? Marvellous stuff, wasn't
What
it?
a great guy.
Great,
yeah,
wasn't
it's
it?
very
Great.
talented.
Great
yeah.
interview.
Well, boys, listen, we've been on shows again today. It's just been completely packed solid.
Is that it? We finished again?
I can't believe it.
That's gone quick, yeah.
It's just been, John, it's always been great. Today has just flown. Today's flown.
Yeah.
And
it's been a great show.
Yeah, I hope you like it. We're gonna do a couple of new shows coming your way. We'll do a couple of outside broadcasts, I think, coming your way in the next few weeks.
When
As
the
the weather's
snow clears.
the weather's getting a bit better, so we're going to go out and about. We're going to do some shows from the capital of London City, up there, and a few out and about. So we've got them coming up. A couple of them, some pre-records as well when we're out on gigs and stuff. We'll bring you some of the late stuff coming on. Johnny Wald, if I can ask you to sum up your week in 3 words, what would you say?
Fantastic. I've had a great week.
That's 3 words, Johnny.
I love it.
Paul.
I'll go for super smashing great.
Oh, that's great. See what he done now?
Yeah.
See what he done now?
Yeah.
I'm going to, what I'm going to say with all this snow? Bring me sunshine.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Good night. God bless you. Good night, world.
Good night, world.
Good night, world.
See you again soon, yeah? Keep listening. We're here every week.
Taddy bye, everybody!
Yeah,
Taddy
taddy
bye!
bye, We can sing out.
Yeah.
In your smile. Come on, boys. Bring me laughter. All the while. That's lovely. Wave your hands in the air. In this world where we live, there should be more happiness. So much joy you can give to each brand new bright tomorrow. Make me happy through the years. Never bring me any tears. Let your arms be as warm as the sun from up above. bring me sun, bring me sunshine, bring me love. All right. Bring me sunshine, bring me love in your smile. Bring me laughter
all the while,
all the while. In this world where we live, there should be more happiness. So much joy you get. Hello, honey. With me, run the bright tomorrow. Make me have Arsenal. Through the years. Never bring me.
Hello, Anne.
Any tears.
Any tears.
Let your arms be as warm as the sun from up above. Yeah, bring me fun, Johnny, Paul.
Sunshine.
Bring me love.
Bring me fun. Bring me sunshine. Bring me love. Good night. God bless. Have a great week. See you again soon.